In the 1930s, for about 2 decades or so, there's a group of men that met at the University of Oxford, and they called themselves the Inklings. And these are a group of writers. You're going to recognize the most famous of them. The first one was C.S. Lewis. He was part of that group. And the other one is J.R.R. Tolkien. Now, you might know that Tolkien wrote the Lord of the Rings series. Are you familiar with that? If you spent the time watching those movies, you know how long they are and how complex they can be. C.S. Lewis, of course, Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. So they would gather weekly and they would share amongst their friends. There's a friend group. They would usually meet at a pub or something like that, and they would read their fiction and their writing to one another. And so Lord of the Rings was actually read to this group of the Inklings before it was published, before it came out as you know it today. So that was sort of the sounding board, and they would give input and they would interact with the writings of C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien and all these other writers at the time at the University of Oxford. So that's the Inklings. Now, if you know the Lord of the Rings, kind of the key center of the Lord of the Rings is the One Ring. You know, the ring that's in the middle of the whole story. The whole story kind of revolves around this ring. It's sort of a really potent symbol. Now, Tolkien never said that the ring means a singular thing. In fact, he said it means a lot of things. So people have, of course, have different perspectives as to what the One Ring means. And so some have said that it symbolizes and represents evil, which it certainly does in the movies, power, corruption, addiction, wealth, greed, temptation, war, ego, fame. And when you watch and you read the story, you can see how the One Ring is at the center of all these sort of things that happen within the story. So it symbolizes a lot within the movie. Now, as we look at this passage of Revelation 17, and actually throughout Revelation you see this, but you see it particular here this morning, the One Ring that encompasses a lot of the things that Revelation talks about, the One Ring in Revelation is Babylon. All right, so when we hear the word Babylon, you want to think One Ring. It symbolizes a number of things that were going on and happening within culture of that day, and actually culture of today. We use that language today. We might refer to something as Babylon, as like a city of a place or a situation of immorality or sexual excess or whatever it may be. So in Revelation, Babylon acts as the One Ring acts in the Lord of the Rings. Okay, it sort of represents and symbolizes a lot of things. Now, it's important to realize that Babylon also it was a nation on the Euphrates River, but Babylon means much more than the city named Babylon. Babylon comes from the word Babel, which is from the story of Genesis chapter 11. And in Genesis chapter 11, the people are trying to construct a tower. And they're trying to construct a tower that they can, basically so that they can create a name for themselves, so that they can sort of reach heaven themselves. And their intent with building this tower was to build a new society without God. They were going to be their own God. And so this was what you read in Genesis chapter 11. And in response to their desire to be their own God, what God did is he confused their languages. And so the story tells us that he confused their languages so that humanity cannot find its unity apart from God. So throughout history, nations have tried to build their kingdoms without God. And throughout history, nations who tried to build their kingdoms without God have often been referred to as Babylon. Right? In the Old Testament, you see this. Nineveh, Tyre, Persia, Greece, Rome have all been called Babylon in the Bible. So Babylon is often associated with idolatry, blasphemy, persecution of God's people. And so throughout the book of Revelation, this complex book, we see these pictures of contrast. You're either marked by Jesus or you're marked by the beast. And that contrast also happens when it comes to you're either part of the city of Babylon or you're part of the city of God or the New Jerusalem. So you see these mixed metaphors throughout Revelation, throughout the whole book. So in this Revelation 17, all right, our chapter this morning, John is having a vision. The Apostle John is having a vision, and the vision that he has is a vision that personifies the forces of evil that's at work in our world, right, in Babylon. So it focuses on the deception of Babylon, how nations try to build societies without God, and the lies that need to happen in order for those societies to build a nation without God, or for that to take place. Lies need to take place in order for that to happen. So we're going to look this morning at some of those lies. Of course, there's many. We're just going to look at 3 of those lies here this morning. Now, Revelation 17 focuses on the deception of Babylon, the lies that Babylon communicates in order to create a society without God. And then in chapter 18, it talks about and focuses on Babylon's destruction. So I've chosen to do both these separately. If you ever listen to series on lines in Revelation, most people do this together. But I think that there's enough there for us. And it's good for us to differentiate that chapter 17 is about the deception, and chapter 18 is about the destruction of Babylon. So, in this passage, we see that there's a spiritual war that's happening behind the scenes. And Revelation is all about pulling back the curtain so that we can look into the spiritual realm. So there's a spiritual realm that is taking place, and John is using this very vivid language, these very vivid pictures to describe for us through this great prostitute what is going on here, and that there's a war that's being raged. So now when you read Revelation, it's very complicated because of, like we've talked about many times, but the symbolism and the mixed metaphors and all that's taking place. So it does require us to think deeply and to go slowly through this book to make sense of it. And you know, even after we try to make sense of it, it still doesn't seem to make sense. Do you find that? I find that every week, and I'm the one doing the talking. And so we're reminded that we're in a spiritual battle. Ephesians 6 tells us this, verse 12. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Spiritual battle taking place around us. It's a raging war. Now, the One Ring in the Lord of the Rings series is, by all accounts, just looks like a regular ring. Until you hold it and you realize things are not as they seem. Revelation shows us that there's a spiritual battle raging around us, and things are not as they seem. So that's really important for us to understand as we go through Revelation, that the forces of Babylon, that all those things that are against God, all those things that are spreading lies to create a society without God, those things are at work around us. So we're going to look at a few of those lies this morning, and then we're going to look close with one powerful truth that we need to hang our hats on as we leave here this morning. So Revelation 17, 1-2. All right. Then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and said to me, Come, and I will show you the judgment of the great prostitute who is seated on many waters. Now notice where she's seated, okay? With whom the kings of the earth have committed sexual immorality, and with the wine of whose sexual immorality the dwellers on earth have become drunk. So John sees this vision, this symbolic picture. All right, so many waters she's seated on, the nations and the people of the earth. Now it says that the prostitute is said to lead the kings being the rulers of the world, into sexual immorality. And with the lure of her seduction and her sexual immorality, she's also seduced all those who live on the earth, right? Those many waters, the nations and the peoples of the earth. Nobody has escaped the great prostitute's seducing of the world. Okay, so this prostitute, John is showing us in this vision, has captivated the hearts of the earth and the lives of those on the earth. Not only the kings or the rulers of the world, but all the peoples of the earth have been drawn into the seductiveness of the great prostitute. As 1 John 2:16 explains, it says, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of one's lifestyle have become our gods. That's very true when you look at our day. Now, this image of the prostitute in the first century would be a little bit different than the way that we understand a prostitute today. In the first century, when they would have read this from John, the picture of the prostitute would have gave them an immediate religious connotation. You say, a prostitute and religion, how does that all work together? It seems to be polar opposites. Well, in the first century, prostitution and the key place for prostitution took place in the pagan temples where they had pagan cult prostitutes. So it was just like, you go to check your mail. In that day, if you weren't obviously a follower of Jesus and you followed one of these cult temples, you would, part of your day might be just stopping in for a little visit with the cult prostitute. And religion and prostitution or idolatry were really in sync with one another. So it's very, very normal. All right. So when they heard this, when they would read this, they would connect the temple pagan worship of false gods with the cult prostitutes that people would go to consistently. So prostitution and religion were intertwined in the first century temple worship. Now, in the Bible, the nation of Israel is often connected with spiritual idolatry, is associated with physical immorality. So, for the nation of Israel, right, spiritual idolatry is always associated with physical immorality. There's a connection there with the nation of Israel. So the symbol of the great prostitute in Revelation 17 is everything that allures us or everything that draws us away from the rightful worship of God and onto the worship of anything or anyone else. So sex, sensuality, wealth, greed, relationships, etc. You can fill in the blanks. So anything that draws us away from God's rightful place on the throne of our heart is idolatry. So there's a significance to this picture of connecting our spiritual idolatry with physical immorality. And the picture is this. This is used in the Bible often. If you want to look at the book of Hosea, you can see this as well. But you can look through Scripture and you can see this connection because there's no better picture to describe or a better image to describe the rejection of God than this picture of the prostitute and physical immorality connected with spiritual idolatry. So God is the one that we're meant to be with. All right, He created us to be with Himself, and with sexual immorality and adultery, what it does is it screams rejection of the one that we're made to be with. So when we worship anything else but God, Revelation 17 is a picture that when we do that, we're actually whoring ourselves. We're saying, we don't want or need you, God. So it's a very intentional and important picture for us to understand what takes place when we have idolatry. We're whoring ourselves like the great prostitute in Revelation 17. Now let's look at a couple lies here. The first lie is this. Babylon's lie number one. What is worthy of your worship in life is the here and now. Eat, drink, and be merry. So it's a drawing away of the worship to God and onto the worship of anything else. Now that's the role, isn't it, of the second beast that comes out of the sea. Right? The propagandist that we looked at previously to the Antichrist. It's to draw our worship off of God and onto the Antichrist, onto the beast. So anything that draws us away. This is a lie in our culture, right? That is the moment that matters. Eat, drink, and be merry. Eat, drink, and do what you want, when you want, because now matters more than anything. C.S. Lewis once said this. He said, put first things first, and we get second things thrown in. Put second things first, and we lose both first and second things. We never get, say, even the sensual pleasures of food at its best when we're being greedy. So when we put second things first, it's idolatry. Who should be first? God should be first in our lives. So that's C.S. Lewis's point. All right, so let's keep going here and see what else we can learn. And he carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast. Remember, this is John, just John articulating his vision, on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names, and it had 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and jewels and pearls, holding in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and impurities of her sexual immorality. And on her forehead was written a name of mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes and of earth's abominations. So the woman is sitting on a scarlet beast, and the beast is full of blasphemous names. The beast has 7 heads and 10 horns. All right, this is the same beast. The prostitute's sitting on the same beast. It's the same beast, okay? Now, here you get another picture of what happens in apocalyptic literature. Now, remember what we read previously. What was the great prostitute sitting on? The waters. Now, what's she sitting on? She's sitting on the beast. And you're going to see, she's also in verse 9, she's seated on 7 hills. So she's seated on 3 different things. This is apocalyptic literature. It's a mixing of metaphors and mixing of images. So the beast carries the woman. The beast carries the woman. Now you remember, when we looked previously at the beast that came out of the earth and the beast that came out of the sea, who was behind both of those beasts? It was Satan. It was the great red dragon that's described in Revelation, the serpent of old. So the woman and all the lures of Babylon, she's being carried by the power that comes from the beast, which is ultimately Satan, okay? So she's being empowered, the evil and all the things she's doing, the power that she has does not come from herself. The power that she has comes from the great red dragon, the beast, okay? So the beast is behind, the point of this is the beast is behind the evil of Babylon, and the 7 heads and the 10 horns, they reveal that the beast is very powerful. The prostitutes clothed in purple and scarlet, which were colors of splendor and magnificence and often would be put on those of royalty in that day. The dyes were costly, and that's why only those with wealth could afford purple linen. So the prostitute, the picture that we want to see here is the prostitute is this beautiful woman clothed in really appealing ways, in great splendor, great magnificence, and everything about her draws you to her. Draws you to her. This is what John's painting for us. Right? She's got an allure to her. You want to be with her. You want to be with her. So verse 4 shows the splendor of the prostitute. She looks great. She looks great. Yet on her forehead, what does it say? Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes and of earth's abominations. Understand this, okay? If you're trying to make sense of this, understand this is a pig in lipstick. This is a pig in lipstick. You know that saying? It's awesome. Okay, this is a pig in lipstick. The picture that John's painting for us here is that this prostitute, she looks magnificent. She looks amazing. You're drawn to her, but she's a pig in lipstick that no matter how glamorous she may look, she is nothing more than a prostitute. She's nothing more than a prostitute. It's like the things that we worship in place of God, they look like they're going to satisfy us. But they're nothing more than a dressed up prostitute. Nothing more than a dressed up prostitute. All right, let's keep going. Babylon's lie number 2. The lie of our culture is this, okay? You are enough. You are enough. You belong to no one. The lie that who we are is wrapped up in our own self-perception. Radical autonomy. So the message of Babylon is that we are ours to do with what we please. Self-made, self-reliant. We don't belong to God. We belong to ourselves. And in order for the first lie to take place, that first lie of misplaced worship, the second lie of radical autonomy needs to take root. See, if you don't belong to God and only to yourself, what's the outcome of that? The outcome is you worship what makes you happy, because the universe revolves around you. You're the center of the universe, not God. That's the lie of Babylon. That's the lie of our culture. 2 Corinthians 9:9 says, we felt that we had received the sentence of death, but that was to make us rely not on ourselves, but on God who raises the dead. So think about this with relation to sex. If you live the lie that you belong to no one, then you will downplay the importance of sex through the eyes of God. If we belong to no one, then we can use sex however we want to use sex. Because after all, I'm my own God. We treat it like it's a renewable resource. Also, when we believe the lie that we belong to no one, then we begin to look around for other ways to try to make sense of who we are. So if our identity under God isn't as his creation made in his image, then who are we? In today's culture, just think deeply with me on this, okay? In today's culture, sexuality has filled that void. Who we are is who we have sex with. So our culture looks to sexuality to define who we are. We're so convinced of our own autonomy that sex is nothing. It's nothing. Sex is nothing. Hook up, shack up, break up. But sexuality is everything. Sex is nothing, but sexuality is everything. So the reality is that we belong to God. He is our creator who made us. We are made in his image. Our identity has to be rooted and is only found in him. So Babylon's lie is the opposite. All right, we belong to ourselves. We do what we want. We sleep with whoever we want. We buy what we want. We exist for ourselves. If you fall out of love with your spouse, you trade him in for a new model. You do what you want when you want. Because the universe revolves around you. Radical autonomy. You are your own God. So this cultural lie of radical autonomy is not out there. It's in here. It's in here. It's seeped into the church. The lie that the lie that who we are is wrapped up in our own self-perception. The same lie that gripped Adam and Eve in Genesis chapter 3, it's not a new lie. It's not a new lie. The lie is to believe that we belong to no one and to believe that, in fact, we are our own God. This affects you. This affects me. Autonomy is one of the greatest obstacles to discipleship in your life. Self-centered discipleship. So discipleship that centers on the autonomous self, a shift from God to self as the central focus of faith and of your discipleship. So how might we do this? Well, let me just give you an example of how sometimes we do this. I'll give you the example of baptism because that's coming up. When it comes to baptism, the scripture is very clear that God commands us to be baptized. But when we live out our discipleship with radical self-autonomy, what we say is, I don't know, I don't really want to do that. I don't want people to see me. I don't want the church family to celebrate with me in this. I just think I'll let it go. See, that's how radical self-autonomy affects your discipleship. Because in essence, what you're saying is, it doesn't really matter what God says, because I'm my own God, so I decide what commands I'm going to follow and which ones I'm not. See, the contemporary cultural mantra is this: self and being true to yourself alone is your highest good. We've replaced the transcendence of God with the transcendence of self. You're the center of the universe. So according to Jesus, though, when we look at Scripture, discipleship is not about self-actualization or self-preservation. It's about self-denial. Right? Matthew 16, 24 and 25, then Jesus told his disciples, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Discipleship is costly. It's costly. And the pursuit of deeper discipleship, forward progress of the gospel in your life, it will cost you. It will cost you. So you got to count the cost. Count the cost. You'll know yourself most when you're carrying the cross. True self-knowledge comes not through this cultural mantra to be true to yourself, but through denying yourself, taking up your cross and following Jesus. And when we make discipleship about self-actualization, not self-denial, we fail to embody the way of the cross that Jesus calls us to follow. Are you tracking with me? Okay. Discipleship is not the pursuit of self that transforms our view of God. It's the pursuit of God that transforms the self. Our whole selves. In 2 Corinthians 4:5, for what we proclaim is not ourselves, but Jesus Christ as Lord, with ourselves as servants for Jesus' sake. Now that doesn't sound very popular, does it? I mean, who wants to be a servant? Who wants to carry the cross? Who wants to not be on the throne? I want to be on the throne of my own life. Of course I do. And often that reality is manifested in my life in what I do and how I think and how I respond in relationship with my own family and friends. And look, I get it. But Jesus calls us to something different. It's not about the pursuit of self. It's about the pursuit of God that radically transforms self. Christianity is not a religion of self-improvement. It's a discipleship program of self-denial. The good life starts and ends with God. And at the center, discipleship is the refrain that we want more of God and less of ourselves, self-denial. But what does John 3:30 say? It says, he must increase, but I must decrease. But what our culture says is, I must increase and he must decrease because I'm God. Don't buy the lie that you're the center of the universe. God is. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I marveled greatly. So you see this woman, she persecutes, and she revels in the persecution of the godly as a drunk would revel in wine. Verse 7, but the angel said to me, to John, why do you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns that carry her. Okay, so now the angel says, okay, John, I'm going to tell you what all this means. Verse 8, the beast that you saw was and is not and is about to rise from the bottomless pit and go to destruction. Now, the language here is a bit confusing, isn't it? What this means is the beast once was, now is not, yet will come out of the abyss for destruction later. So the words, it's kind of hard to navigate. So the beast was once, now is not, yet will come. Okay? And the dwellers on earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, will marvel to see the beast, because it was and is not and is to come. The beast is this prostitute, this lure of Babylon is seductive. You want to be part of it. You want to indulge in it. So all of who the woman prostitute or Babylon is comes from the beast. And remember, the beast from chapter 13 of Revelation. This is the beast that rises out of the sea. This is the counterfeit Jesus, the imitation Savior, what we would call the Antichrist, okay? An ideological and political force that is set against God and against the people of God. Verse 9. This calls for a mind with wisdom. Does it ever? Does it ever? The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. Okay, so here she's seated on the mountains. So Babylon, again, is everything opposed to God. Now, at the time of Jesus, the manifestation of all that was opposed to God was manifested in the Roman Empire at that particular time. So the 7 mountains refer to the 7 hills that Rome was built on. So in John's day, you would read this and you would immediately know that John is referring to Rome. He's referring to Rome and how Babylon has manifested itself through the empire of Rome. Now, one of the best known nicknames of Rome is the city of 7 hills. And this is a picture of Rome. And it tells you the ancient boundaries of the ancient city. So there were 7 hills that the first settlements of Rome began. So these are the 7 mountains that John's referring to. He's saying the manifestation of Babylon at that time was Rome. This is not some obscure thing, okay? Rome actually celebrated yearly a celebration, an annual festival called Septimontivon. And it meant 7 mountains. 7 mountains. So verse 10. There are also 7 kings, 5 of whom have fallen. One is the other, has not yet come. And when he does come, he must remain only for a little while. As for the beast that was and is not, is an 8th, but belongs to the 7 and goes to destruction. So now it's like, what's happening, right? So there's different understandings of exactly what is happening here, what this means. As we've seen through Revelation, right? There's different perspectives when it's not overly clear. And so now one of the views as to this is that this is referring to 7 great kingdoms, sort of looking at biblical history from this perspective, that 5 have fallen. 5 of the great kingdoms have fallen during John's day. So in John's day, this would have been reference to maybe Egypt, Assyria, Babylonia, Persia, and Greece. The 6th kingdom would be Rome. That's built upon the 7 mountains, because that's what was happening at that day. So that's the what is. And the other has not yet come, referring to this view to the one world empire to come. So maybe a revival of the Roman Empire. So this is one view of how we might understand this. Verse 11 says this, as for the beast that was and is not, it is an 8th, but it belongs to the 7 and it goes to destruction. Now, when it comes, it's going to come for a short time. This 7th will quickly be taken over by an 8th and it will become the state of the Antichrist. Okay? It's like, okay, don't get bogged down with this. But that's one particular view. The second view is that the 7 kings represents rulers of Rome. And in this view, is a pretty weak view, in my opinion, because you have to get pretty creative with what you do here. Because in the time of the founding of Rome until John's day, there was more than 5 fallen leaders. So it doesn't quite work out. People who kind of hold to this perspective. The third, and which I feel is probably the most likely and what seems to align best with what we've already seen in Revelation, is that this particular view is more of a symbolic view. Okay, in this view, the 7 kings is seen as a picture of the whole. What does the number 7 mean? Perfection or completion. So the 7 kings is a picture of the whole. 7, right, being the number of completeness. It symbolizes the whole of Roman history, which is the whole of Babylon's history. The 8th is the beast himself. John says that he belongs to the 7, not one of the 7, but simply belongs to the 7. So symbolically, the beast is the power behind all. It's the power behind the whole history of Babylon as Babylon has been manifested over and over in various kingdoms. So one day, when all Babylons have come, the beast himself will make himself known. Okay? You have to listen to that again because you probably didn't pick up on much of that, but that's okay. I throw it in there so you can go back next time if you want to listen to it again. It doesn't really matter. The point is that there's 3 different perspectives. The one that I think best holds to what we see in Revelation is more a symbolic view rather than a literal view or a view that these are specific actual rulers. You got to get pretty creative with that. So let's keep going. And the 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received royal power. But they are to receive authority as kings for 1 hour together with the beast. Circle 1 hour there, okay? So it's important. These are of one mind, and they hand over their power and authority to the beast. And they will make war on the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them. For he is the Lord of lords and the King of kings, and those with him are called and chosen and faithful. So the 10 kings, what's happening here? 10 is the number of completeness as well in Revelation. 7 is also the number of completeness too, but it's more perfection and completeness. 10 is a number of completeness. You know, we have 10 toes, you have 10 fingers. That's the idea here. So who are the 10 kings? Well, they're powers representing the totality of the powers of the nations on the earth, which have been carried on the back of the beast. They are the nations. They are the prostitutes of Babylon. All right. So now how long do they have? They have 1 hour. 1 hour. It's very articulate here. So together, the 10 kings and the beast they rule, but their union endures for only 1 hour. Now, is it 1 hour? The clock is ticking. See, it's symbolic to show us that the time that they rule is fast. It's short. It's short. All those that are against God are going to fall quickly. In 1 hour. That's it. Verse 15, and the angel said to me, the waters that you saw, where the prostitute is seated, are peoples and multitudes and nations and languages. All right, so we understand that. And the 10 horns that you saw, they and the beast will hate the prostitute. They will make her desolate and naked and devour her flesh and burn her up with fire. For God has put it into their hearts to carry out his purpose by being of one mind and handing over their royal power to the beast until the words of God are fulfilled. Verse 18, and the woman that you saw is the great city that has dominion over the kings of the earth. Babylon falls because evil self-destructs. Babylon falls because evil self-destructs. Systems that are built on principles that are inconsistent with the living God, they do not endure. They do not endure. And the prostitute discovers that the beast has only used her for his evil ends. The beast doesn't love her. The beast hates her and uses her. Think about a man who is finished with a prostitute. What happens? Well, she's cast aside. She's cast aside. Men don't go to prostitutes to love them. They go to prostitutes to use them. Babylon won't last. It won't last. The world is passing away, and every government system and structure has a shelf life. There is a coming day when the kingdoms of this world will no longer rule the day. Okay? Think about this. Internalize this. This is what John's telling us here. Every kingdom will one day give way to the true kingdom. All right. The final lie of Babylon, then we'll look at one truth. The lie of Babylon is this, culturally, that the world will last forever. The world will last forever. Isaiah 40 verse 8 says, the grass withers, the flowers fades, and the word of God will stand forever. So the only thing that will last is the word of the Lord. It's the only thing that will last is the kingdom of God, not the kingdom of this earth, not the Babylons that come and go, that are used by Satan for his purposes. They will fall. So Babylon can be, we live in Babylon, right? It can be intimidating and powerful and influential. It's enticing, it's persuasive. It gives the appearance of a promise of victory, that you're on the winning team. If you just align yourself with Babylon, get on board or get crushed. Join the team or be called a fool. Worship the beast and whore with the prostitute, or live a wasted life. But the Bible makes it clear that eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you die. It's a lie. It's a lie. We will stand before the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, and we'll give an account for the life he's given each one of us. The life many will waste. The world lasts for just a little while, for 1 hour. For 1 hour. And it's headed for destruction. It's headed for defeat. Now, perhaps the greatest thing we can do as we wrestle with a passage like this that's complex and challenging is to step back and to maybe get some perspective and ask ourselves a few questions. So only you can do this, okay? Have I allowed myself to be seduced by her, by the great prostitute of Babylon? What does she offer me that threatens to entice me away from Christ? Maybe there's that one thing in your life where you're being enticed into Babylon. Are there areas in which you've compromised or you've made accommodation? Have you been too afraid of losing your job or losing customers or losing friends if you refuse to make compromises that the world applauds? Perhaps a test of whether or not we've given our heart away to Babylon is how we respond when all of Babylon's luxuries or benefits are taken away from us. Have some of the pleasures of life in this world, the enjoyment of things like sports or entertainment or food, have they morphed into idols that have become too important for me or to me, that I have very little time for the things of God? My brother used to always say with everything, he says, it all comes down to choices. It does. It just comes down to choices. You have, every day you have choices to make. And you say, oh, it's so hard. Well, you have a choice to make. So what choice are you going to make? What ideas, images, and dreams of the world have become so much a part of my thinking and feeling and dreaming that I don't even recognize them as being from Babylon. I think this is so true. Pastor and author C.J. Mahaney says it well. Today, the greatest challenge facing Christians is not persecution from the world, but it's seduction by the world. Seduction by the world. We are in a spiritual battle, friends. Babylon is seeking to draw us away and to be mounted on the back of the beast. We've got to put on the armor of God. And we need to recognize and be aware that we are in a spiritual battle. And every single day there is something knocking at the door of your heart to say, no more God, no more discipleship, no more loving and following him, no more worship, no more church, no more community. Do this instead. Have you noticed that how the beast uses the prostitute, right, the culture, the world, to normalize evil in the wider culture? Have you noticed that? What happens? First, we overlook evil. Then we permit evil. Then we legalize evil. Then we promote evil. Then we celebrate evil. And then we persecute those who still call it evil. That's what happens. 1 John 2:15-17 says, do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh and the desires of the eyes and the pride of life, is not from the Father, but is from the world. And the world is passing away along with its desires. But whoever does the will of God abides forever. 3 lies of Babylon. Lie number 1. What is worthy of your worship in life is the here and now. Eat, drink, and be merry. Drawing away worship of God. It's into worship of anything else. Lie number 2. You are enough. You belong to no one. Who you are is wrapped up in your own self-perception. Radical autonomy. And lie number 3, the world will last forever. It will not last forever. These are the lies, but here's the truth. They will make war on the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them. For he is the Lord of lords and the King of kings, and those with him are called and chosen and faithful. Every kingdom will one day give way to the true kingdom, the true Lord of lords, the true King of kings, and all those that are his. So hearing and keeping this passage of Revelation 17 means that day to day, year after year, we have to find that love for our true King is squeezing out any lingering love of the world and its lies and its seduction. So we need to grow in wisdom. We need to grow in discernment. We need to have the ability to see things as they are. We're better able to see what will last, where true security can be found when we pursue above all else the things of God.